Hello YouTube, this is Sam from Tigers Schooling. In this session of the video, we're actually going to talk about the bile. So in order to understand the bile, we know that the bile is secreted from your liver. Alright, we know that the bile is secreted from the liver, and from the liver it goes from the liver, it enters to the gallbladder, and from the gallbladder it goes and drain into your duodenum, or the second part of your duodenum, which is a part of your small intestine. So in this section we'll be talking about the physiology of your bile. So let's get started. What happens, if we first we'll talk about the passage of your bile. So what happens, the opening of your bile duct into duodenum is actually when your bile is from gallbladder enters into the duct and that drains to the duodenum, and at that point it is guarded by a sphincter of which we call the sphincter of Oddi. As it enters the duodenum, there's a sphincter, we call it sphincter of Oddi, O-D-D-I, and which is guarded by the sphincter of Oddi that prevents the bile entering except during the digestive period. Like there's a digestive period, it must enter at that time. Before it cannot be, and that is only regulated because of this sphincter of Oddi. So during interdigestive period, bile flows into the gallbladder. Bile flows from the gallbladder and is stored here. After a meal, sphincter Oddi relaxes, gallbladder contracts, and the bile enters the duodenum, the second part of the duodenum. That's it for the passage. And now let's talk about the functions of your bile. In case of functions of your bile, we have to remember that the bile actually, if we could talk about, we will talk about the functions of your gallbladder. In case of the functions of the gallbladder, we know it actually used as a storage for your bile, and it also releases bile. It concentrates your bile, like concentration, it increases by the concentration of bile. How it increases the concentration of bile? By absorbing the extra water in it, like absorbing the extra fluid in it and making it concentrated. The third function, it would be having the acidification of your bile, and the fourth function, it will be the addition of mucus to the bile. It will add up the mucus into your bile. Now let's go and further talk about the bile juice. Let's talk about the bile juice. All right, let me write it down out here, the bile juice. Okay, so the bile juice is actually composed of, if we're talking about the bile juice, is actually composed of an aqueous alkaline fluid, lecithin, your bile salts, your bilirubin, the cholesterol, and there are no enzymes in your bile juice. So remember this point, this is very important. That is, there are no enzymes in your bile juice. And in the case of organic constituent of bile, you have to remember they are derived from your hepatic cells, and there are water bicarbonate, and in inorganic which are released from your duct cells. And further we talk about the bile, we know that the pH of your bile is actually 7.7, between 7.7 to 8.6, and it's an alkaline secretion and in nature, and its daily secretion is comparatively to 500 ml, its daily secretion. Now let's talk about the bile salts.